Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Gar Borras Time Machine. Gar, this time we're going all the way back in your time machine to June 1975. And of course, we're going to be talking about the movie Jaws. And I got to give credit where credit is due, because on our very first episode, when we were talking about 90 Years of Dracula, during that conversation, you'd discussed a list of all these great films that you just really loved, and Jaws was on that list, and you kind of took me back, because I totally forgot it. You were telling me, I remember when Jaws first came out in 1975, and I mean, I remember how scared everybody was, and I really had forgotten about that. I thought, we got to do an episode on Jaws. So again, I'm giving the credit where credit is due. So I guess since you're the man that kind of inspired this episode, why don't you share with us, the very first time you saw Jaws and what that experience was like for you?
Well, basically, I'm going to be repeating that story that I told you before. I was with a bunch of my, I guess because it was the mid-'70s, my stoner friends.
Yeah.
We were all just a bunch of goofy young people in our late teens, early 20s.
Yeah.
And, your typical high school, Ridgemont High, group of kids, right?
Uh-huh.
And we're at the theater, and, because, there was this big hype going on about the movie Jaws. And when we pulled up in a car, car full of our the group of us, we saw the line, and the line was absolutely gigantic. It went around the building, and it was gigantic. And so our first reaction was, "Oh man, I don't want to stand in that line." We just didn't want to stand in that line.
Now let me ask you, in regards to that, Gar. Prior to going to Jaws, had you ever seen a line like that for a film?
The first time I had seen a line like that was I went with my parents to see 2001: A Space Odyssey when it was being shown in the theater. Okay. And that was the first time I had ever seen a gigantic line. But movies back in the 1970s were a big deal. A bigger deal than it is now, because everything is so much more diverse. I'm not saying that it isn't a big deal now, because there's still things that go on that are big deals. But going to the theater and having a gigantic line isn't like what it used to be. I remember I went with my uncle, who took my sister and I and some friends to go see Woodstock.
Oh yeah.
And that was another gigantic line, waiting to go see the movie. So, but it just seemed that was part of the thing that was going on back in the 70s. Whenever you went to see something big, you stood in line. For example, when you go to the amusement park back in the old days when it was just Disneyland, and the big deal at Disneyland was the Matterhorn, you stood in a big line and waited like an hour, and a half, 2 hours.
And you remember when
you could get on the ride.
And you remember when they had those ticket books back at Disneyland? You had so many tickets.
Oh yes,
and then you'd have
the famous tickets.
Yeah, in fact, talking about movie experience back in the 70s, I believe you told me when you saw the Woodstock movie, you'd seen it on a drive-in screen. Is that correct?
No. I had gone to the
movie theater,
the Fox Theater in Los Angeles. It was like that was like the place to
go. Yeah.
To see a major movie. When it was first released, and my uncle took us, to there, and I it was my first experience, because I think I was in junior high school, and we're standing in line to see Woodstock, and I smelled weed for the first time.
Wow, yeah, that's what that was. Yeah. And in reading and prepping for a show today, I was reading that actually first Jaws, and then in a few years later, 1977, when Star Wars came out, these were kind of the first two real kind of summer blockbuster films, and Jaws really was the first film that kind of created the modern film industry as far as how you would advertise for a film and you'd market and have all this merchandise, but those are the first two major films that kind of where you really had all this stuff to go along with the film. They merchandised it to death. Like even today, just the other day I bought a Jaws T-shirt online, off of Amazon. But the point is, even all these years later, we're as we sit here and speak, just last year was the 45th anniversary of Jaws, and people are still talking about the film.
Well, during that time, I can finish that story, later. But during that time, it became the model. The movie Jaws became the model for what they do now, which is called formula. Because they used the elements that made Jaws so successful, action, adventure, you know what I mean? Relying more on the action and relying more on the visuals. The modern day formula movies rely much less on script and characters and writing and engagement of the people, and those formula movies rely more on visuals and excitement and explosions and sound and all of that stuff. So, but Jaws became the actual model for that. Because before that, those type of movies didn't exist, and they used that, the executives for the
promotion,
for the film companies, said, hey, we can use these elements to release other movies, and have them always be something completely different. But use these elements as our model, as what we're going to try to accomplish in making these movies. And in all truth, even though those formula type of movies are not my cup of tea, because I personally prefer being more engaged in the characters
the
and
story,
the emotions and the really creative storylines. I gravitate more towards that. And the modern formula movies are very, it's catchphrases.
How many clicks
really
can we get?
Not much for depth in characters and things.
How many clicks can we get? How many likes? And just to kind of touch a little more on what you're talking about. When you go back and you look at that iconic Jaws poster, like I said, you see it on the movie poster. You see it on anytime we see an image of Jaws. That's the picture we automatically get, that movie poster, from 45 years ago. And when you think of Jaws, very much kind of like another kind of Steven Spielberg related film, E.T. You see a famous E.T. finger, that lights up. We know immediately when you see that picture what film it is. And oddly enough, also Steven Spielberg directed. So I don't know if that's a Spielberg thing or just kind of coincidental, but very, very iconic, like even just the imagery, when you see Jaws. We know what it is instantly when you see that shark.
Well, his big breakout was Jaws. He had directed things before that, but nothing that was real super huge. And
this was it. This was his big break.
Boy, Jaws. I'm telling you, Jaws was kind of a historic movie because there had really never been a movie that shocked society like that movie. Previous to Jaws, people went to see movies and they liked to laugh and they had, nice storylines and, they entertained, song and dance and, all these kind of things. But But when Jaws came out, Jaws scared the crap out of everybody so much that the beaches were empty.
Yeah.
That movie came out. People were afraid to go to the beach.
Yeah.
That is a huge effect that one movie had on society, and it became like a thing. You would read articles in the paper how like all of a sudden people are noticing and they're making a big deal about it. In the paper, hey, people aren't going to the beach, and there's really only one reason why people aren't going to the beach.
Yeah.
Right now, it's because of this movie.
In fact, let me tell you,
it's a huge impact on society that a movie has never ever had before.
In fact, let me tell you an interesting story. I was reading about this today, prepping for a show. I went on the Wikipedia about Jaws, and it was saying that there were people that were actually suffering mental disorders like anxiety and stuff much more than ever before. And one person individually got so anxious in the theater that they went to see the film and then they went back to see it later. And the second time they started yelling, "Shark! Shark! Shark!" They really, literally, in their mind, thought the shark was coming out of the movie screen and going to attack them. And it sounds kind of crazy, but that's the impact, like you said, this film, has had on people.
Yes, it was, unless you were really there and you kind of experienced it and you started noticing that, people were talking about it and there was this really big buzz at how that movie had affected everybody. I remember hearing people, I ain't going to the beach. Heck no, man.
In fact,
of course, during that time, it was really popular to go to the beach. That's where all the girls were. And wherever the girls are, that's where the guys are going to be. But nobody wanted to go to the beach.
In fact, I was reading a description of Jaws today online, and this is what it said. Jaws is a 1975 American thriller film directed by Steven Spielberg, which was based on the 1974 novel Jaws by Peter Birchley. Now, I was doing some research on who this guy is, and this is interesting that the book was written only 1 year prior to the film being released in 1974, and he was actually an ocean activist, this guy that wrote Jaws, and a number of years before, like in 1945, he was actually a speechwriter for President Lyndon Johnson, and that's why when you watch a film, they're trying to catch the shark, and the one guy that's kind of put in charge of doing so is the local sheriff. But he's working with this marine biologist to they need to catch the shark, but they don't want to kill him. They're trying to do it in a safe way. So I guess that's kind of this guy who wrote the book. That was his angle. But again, a lot of films are based on books and stuff. But I thought how interesting that the book itself was only written 1 year prior to the film being made, and they had him as a co-writer on the script for the original movie. So that's a little kind of interesting background facts that I thought people might be interested in.
Well, the rights to the book got bought by the studio. I'm not sure exactly what studio.
Universal, yeah.
And they saw the potential of making the movie from the book before the book was ever released.
Wow.
And they bought the rights way back, before the book was ever released.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that.
It's kind of, so the interest in the story goes previous to 1974.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that. That's interesting. And here's another interesting fact is like I just read the description. Jaws is a 1975 American thriller. Where a man-eating shark is trying to attack beachgoers. Well, the interesting thing about that is typically you'd see these summer movies and they'd be on the beach and maybe like a guy falling in love with a girl and stuff like that. Good time movie.
But this Funicello and Frankie Avalon.
But to have a thriller type movie that's takes place on the beach, that was really a first of its kind, and what a lot of people loved about the film was Spielberg's kind of the way he directed the film was very much in tune like Alfred Hitchcock's style of directing, in that even just let's talk about the theme and the music for just a minute. I mean, that music, that theme again. When you hear that Jaws theme, we know immediately what film it is from, and like the importance of the music in this film was like the music would start playing, and then all of a sudden you're anticipating seeing the shark, and all of a sudden it kind of jumps out at you, and that's the first time anything like that was really used in film to that degree, and that was another big part of the film, the anticipation of seeing the shark, and the shark's going to appear. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, you're right about that. It also became kind of a model for other
future films.
Future scary movies. Say, for example, like Alien and things like that, which was another big blockbuster that was released back in the 80s. But it became like a model because what happened was the shark that they were using, the mechanical shark, had so many difficulties in filming and keeping it realistic looking. They decided to keep the main foe, which is the shark, something that's hard to see and just kind of like and for some reason, by accident, I would imagine they were just making these adjustments because of how hard it was to film a mechanical shark. And deciding to keep it, something, you'd have to kind of almost squint to see. It created an anticipation in the audience. And then utilizing that music where it dun 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 dun, and it would get louder, and the speed up, a little bit more and a little bit more, also fed that anticipation, which really enhanced the scariness of it, because it left it to be part of your imagination rather than just seeing something. You're kind of it's almost like reading a book, how you picture things in your mind. Well, they were doing that by making it hard to see and all that. But it all just turned out to be like this thing that really, really worked good for scary movies. And if you notice when you watch Alien, they used that same kind of thing. You never really got a good look at the alien. It was always something that you kind of got glances of and things like that. So, it's unique how they were doing it. Spielberg was doing it as an adjustment because of how difficult it was to film the shark. But it actually became something bigger than that. It became an actually used way of filming for scary movies and things like that. It was kind of unique.
Even I was reading again. It was common in a lot of Hitchcock movies. Like you were mentioning before that one of your favorite movies is The Birds. And if you go to that scene in that movie where just you see all of a sudden the scene where all the birds are in that tree and they start flying. I mean, that's probably the first time anybody's ever been that scared of a bird, those kind of birds. And it's like to be able to do that and on the big screen, it's just amazing to have that kind of impact on the audience.
I absolutely loved that movie, The Birds. That movie was so effective. I mean, and yes, they did use it in that same kind of way where they kept the birds as, you would see glances of the birds and stuff like that, but it would take your breath away when you saw all those birds.
I mean, I bet before that film, nobody ever had that kind of fear of birds.
Yes,
and who knows?
yes, it was another movie
Yeah.
that's very similar to Jaws. In the whole approach and everything like that, where they're using something as this bad force.
Yeah, yeah.
They're using the birds as the bad force, and in Jaws, they're using this bad force as a shark. But the difference is everybody has in their mind this preconceived visual, because if you've ever seen pictures of somebody that's been a victim of a real shark attack, it's pretty hideous.
Yeah.
It's pretty shocking, you know what I mean? Because, how, I mean, I'm getting kind of gross.
No, but
how a shark's teeth will just rip you to shreds.
Yeah, I mean, I remember a real story of this surfer girl that she had her arm bit off by and they made a movie about it, by a shark, and then a few years later, after she recovered, she lost one of her arms, but she got back up there on the surfboard and was doing it again.
That takes serious brass ones.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would have to give like massive amounts of respect
courage
to that girl.
Yeah.
Because that's
something.
That's a super huge thing to overcome.
Oh yeah, I mean, I give her kudos for that, and but again, just talking about the birds in that scene, because very much Jaws-like, and I think it's amazing. I mean, you could, I think, even dare take like a sweet wisecracking cartoon character like Bugs Bunny, but if you spook it up enough, that you could probably scare people, and I dare say, after seeing a movie like The Birds, probably there's a good number of people that all of a sudden had a phobia of birds. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, just popped in my head right now. Another movie that also utilizes, the bad force.
Yeah.
Was a movie with the white whale. Have you ever? Gosh, it's escaping me. Moby Dick.
Moby Dick. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a movie from way back in the 1950s.
Wow, yeah.
But just another one of those type of movies where they're utilizing, something as that bad force.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But getting back to Jaws, my personal favorite character was I think the Robert Shaw, whatever his name. I think the sea captain or whatever that agreed to supply the boat to go out there and hunt the shark. That guy's character was absolutely jumped out in that movie. How well he played that character, and he would say such creepy things in that movie.
Yeah, and I got to say, as far as the casting, Richard Dreyfuss, I mean, he's another guy in this film that really kind of stands out, and this was kind of like his breakout role. I mean, he's done a lot since. Probably one of his most notable films since Jaws, probably Mr. Holland's Opus. But see, that's just that one guy. Look at the diversity of his acting. He can do something from like Jaws, and then he can do something like Mr. Holland's Opus. Just amazing how what a great actor he went on to become.
Well, yeah. I mean, but they picked these actors at that time in the mid-'70s because they weren't as well known, and the reason why they didn't really, there was a lot of major actors that were considered for different roles in this movie, but the reason why they turned them down is because they they were too big, and they had preconceived
ideas,
visualizations in people's minds about those actors that would overshadow the characters. And they wanted the characters to have much more of a feel of, hey, this could happen to you, this could happen to me. More rather than having the persona of the actor overshadow the character.
Yeah, and it's funny when you consider that almost the actors were almost secondary in that the main star of the film was Jaws, and it's
yes.
and what made this such a fearful film is we know all these little secrets about how the film was made now, all these years, 45 years later, but at the time when people were sitting in the theater watching this film, I believe many people believed it was a real shark. We didn't know that it was a mechanical shark. They let people have an assumption. And I was reading that originally the filmmakers wanted to kind of see if they could train a real live shark, but quickly realized, no, that's not going to be possible. Yeah.
That's crazy thinking.
Yeah.
You're talking about one of the world's most deadliest creatures, and you're going to try
unpredictable.
To train it?
Yeah. And in fact, this film became very behind the schedule as far as the filming. It was very over budgeted for the simple fact that this was the first time for a major motion picture that was actually filmed on the water.
Yeah, yes. That's another one of those groundbreakers. Because there was so much difficulty in doing that, Spielberg was only in his 20s at that time. I think he was like his mid-20s.
And I heard he would
when he was directing that movie. So he was. It's well known that he was very naive about what he was getting into trying to do this in a location like that.
But he's like,
but they did. I mean, the movie speaks for itself. They went over double in budget.
Yeah,
over double. The original budget, which they were planning for, but it was so difficult for them to film the shark in the movie. They did a tremendous job because look at the effect that it had.
Yeah, and I think I was reading that was his main thing, is making it look as real as possible. He wanted people going to the film theater and the movie theater and kind of. He wanted to convince the audience that was a real shark, and so much to the point that, like you said, they're working in elements that I don't think they really thought what it would take to shoot a film on the water, that it would be that difficult. I mean, it's the first time they've done it, so it really is a learning thing when you're doing something like that for the first time. You got the weather to deal with. You got besides just shark being in the water, and that I understand Spielberg had to he actually had to get in a wetsuit and get in the shark and get in the water, and there were 14 people that had to operate that shark to get it to move properly and look so realistic.
Yeah, that's a huge undertaking, but the end result is I guarantee
I'm convinced,
that when the movie was in actual production and they were going over budget and having to get okays from the executives, from the studio and everything, and I'm sure all of that stuff was really difficult conversations and really difficult to get them to agree to spend the extra money. But when the movie came out and was such a huge success, because it was packing theaters. They had a release for that movie that was gigantic compared to other movies.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it was being shown everywhere. So and everywhere it was being shown had huge lines, just like the thing that I was telling you about my experience when I went to see the movie, and so they just, as soon as they started to see the numbers that the movie was pulling in and how much profit they made off of that movie, I guarantee you all of those arguments got forgotten.
Oh, sure, sure. I mean, and going back to seeing the film for the first time, I mean, talk a little bit about how your heart kind of, jumped out of your chest the first time you seen that shark, pop up on the screen.
Well, going back to that, what we were talking about before, my group of friends were standing out. We were outside of the theater, and one of my friends, we were all going to leave. We were just going, I guess we'll see it some other time. And one of my friends said, well, let's park the car and just go sit there by the entrance of the theater. Let the line in.
Yeah.
And if there's some seats still available, they'll come out and they'll let us know, hey, seats are still available, and we could just buy our tickets and go in and we'll watch the movie.
Wow.
And so I go, okay, sure. If I don't have to stand in that huge line, that's fine with me.
Yeah.
And so sure enough, we're sitting on these benches outside. And they came out of the theater and said, tickets still available. So we went and bought our tickets and went in.
Yeah.
And I told you about this before.
Yeah.
I had no idea where those seats were going to be, and I never thought about it. I wasn't thinking about it. They were in the very front
row.
You're sitting there in front of this gigantic screen where everything you're watching is bigger than life.
Yeah.
It's not like sitting back a ways, which the screen's still big, but when you're sitting in the very front row, it's like you're seeing everything, in its hugest
form,
and most impactful way. So I'm sitting there and I go, well, I can still watch the movie. I didn't know what I was getting into.
Yeah.
They start that movie, and the opening scene was a shocker.
Yeah.
I was sitting there, and it was just a bunch of people like me and anybody else back in the mid-'70s at a beach, having a party and everything, and smoking a little weed, drinking a little alcohol, and having a good time. And so this girl decides to go skinny dipping in the water, and the guy that she was with, he was too drunk, so he wound up passing out, on the sand, and she went in, and she wound up getting munched by the shark.
Wow.
That opening scene on a big screen when you're sitting in the front row, oh my God.
And after seeing this,
I was just like, what did I get myself into?
And I got to ask the obvious question, after seeing that film for the very first time, was it wild till you returned to the beach?
I think it didn't really stop me. But here's the thing you gotta keep in mind. It didn't really stop me. It didn't have that impact. But nobody else that was my friends wanted to go to the beach, so I had a hard time going to the beach because who goes to the beach by
alone?
themselves?
Yeah. Wow.
So I didn't go to the beach as often as I would normally go to the beach, because back in those days, it was during a time that I used to surf and
hang out.
I was a beach-going person. You live in Southern California, you live by the beach. A lot of your friends go surfing, and a lot of the girls like to hang out at the beach and watch their boyfriends surf. And stuff like that. So there was this built-in social circle thing that was going on, but nobody wanted to go.
Oh, that's just so funny. I mean, we're talking about, this goes all the way back to 1975, but that was what the world was kind of really believing after seeing this film. And I got a few little interesting tidbits here. Okay, the mechanical shark, rather. Excuse me. They gave the name Bruce, and oddly enough, it was named after Spielberg's lawyer, because he thought his lawyer was a real shark.
If you get to know lawyers, Even if they represent you, you can see the shark aspect of their lawyers,
Yeah.
even when they're representing yourself.
Yeah, could you imagine? I mean, that had to become the most famous Bruce after Jaws, and people learned that little. He's like, yeah, I'm Jaws. I'm the guy they named the shark after. Yeah, I mean,
Well, another thing was that when they were filming it, it was so difficult to film, and Spielberg was kind of in this learn as you go.
yeah.
So of course there's going to be a lot of mistakes, and there's going to be a lot of we have to redo this, and the crew actually had a nickname for the movie. It was called Flaws.
Oh wow. Yeah.
because there's so many having to reset and redo, and so it was they had a huge amount of difficulty filming it.
Yeah. As far as
and you could just imagine how many people were doing the eye roll when they were making it, not just the studio executives and having to spend all this money, but the people working on the crew and all this whole, but when the movie got released and it became this huge success, all those people probably in hindsight looking at they had no idea what they were becoming part of, because I mean, I think I said it before, but the movie truly was a historic movie.
Oh yeah, so much. Now let me tell you a little bit about that, because I mean, I'd imagine a lot of these people on the film crew, to them maybe it really looked up close like a piece of plastic, and they're like, this just looks like a plastic toy, and to them, when you're that close and you don't realize what they can do with film and all the special effects, and again, that was very new at that time, all these different special effects. So when you're on the film crew and you're seeing the model of the shark up close, maybe it does look like a piece of plastic, but then when you see the movie, you're like, wow, look at what we were able to create. Look at what we talk about being having historical significance. So much that I was reading, the National Film Registry chose to select Jaws as being deserving of preservation. They choose 25 films a year, and I guess in 2001, Jaws was selected by the Library of Congress for preservation in the U.S. National Film Registry as a film that is culturally, historically significant. And
there you go. That's what I was talking about.
Yeah, and so much to what they're saying is, again, we're talking about a film that's 45 years old. So after 45 years, a film starts to kind of, get bad and rot away. So I guess what they do is they choose these films each year, 25 of them, that they feel these films really need to be preserved, and do whatever they can so future generations can see these films. And like you're saying, Jaws was a real learning experience as far as how to make a film, because a lot of what they were doing at the time was very new. And so much I've read that people that are trying to learn how to become directing and make and create films, this is a film they show in film school to show people these are the different filming techniques that we're using this, and it's one of those films. And as far as the filming, it was also filmed in Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts, so that's where most of the filming took place.
Well, that's funny because, for the longest time, I never knew what Martha's Vineyard was.
Yeah.
And, I always heard about it on the news because that's where the president would go, whoever the president would be, that's where they would go for some off time. And just, being... So, in my mind, because I didn't know what Martha's Vineyard was, I always figured it was somebody's farm. Or a place where they grow, grapes.
For wine. For wine.
For wine.
Yeah.
I just thought it was a place like that. It was like somebody's farm.
Yeah, I always thought it had to do with...
I didn't know it was an actual town that they called Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah.
So it's so funny because... Yes, this was, it was a perfect backdrop for that kind of movie, you know, for the town and everything.
Yeah, even
and it was so cool to use that place. You know, there was that subplot in the movie because, you know, you had the greed of the mayor that was putting the importance of the money to be made over human life.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, there was a lot of aspects of that, but it's just so funny that, you know, I never really knew what Martha's Vineyard was, even during this whole time that, you know, Jaws was out. But this is an actual town called Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah, like you, I thought it had to do with wine all these years for the very same reason. I'd always hear of a president, whoever the president was at the time, was visiting Martha's Vineyard. And okay, what is Martha's Vineyard? But yeah, I didn't even realize it was a town, but I just thought some place where the president went and drank wine or something like that, or where the wine was made. Yeah.
You know, it's so... but, you know, I would imagine if you live on the East Coast...
Oh, yeah, you would know.
Probably listen to our conversation right now and just do the major eye roll.
Yeah.
How could you not know? Yeah. But, you know, that's because, you know, if you live on the East Coast, especially in that area... you know, of course you know.
And could you imagine?
I've lived all my life over here on the West Coast.
Not knowing.
So a place like that is just a visualization.
Yeah, and then too, after seeing Jaws, how cool is it that a lot of people that weren't aware of Martha's Vineyard all of a sudden is. And even 45 years later, as we're sitting here talking about Jaws, I bet there's a ton of people that go visit Martha's Vineyard every year just because they know Jaws was filmed there, or, you know, whatever other movie might have been filmed there. But and that's kind of a cool aspect of these movies because too, like you have a fictional place they create in the film like Amity Island, where it's not a real place really, but you see the film and you think, okay, that must be a real island, and they kind of create this own little fictional island in the movie. It's kind of cool, you know.
Well, I guarantee you, if I ever get a chance to do a show, you know, in that area, you know, and you know, and if I have enough downtime, you know, flying out there, because when we do shows, we usually try to arrive the day before,
so you can look around
and then be able to wake up, you know, in the place, and then maybe do a little, you know, exploration kind of thing, and then we'll do sound check and then do the show, and then the next day we'll fly, you know, home or wherever we're going to go. But if we usually, you know, try to arrive the day before, so we have some time to take in the place that we're at.
Yeah.
If I'm ever lucky enough to play in that area and I get a chance, you can take it to the bank. I'm going to Martha's Vineyard because
of Jaws. Oh, yeah. And we can't end our conversation on Jaws without bringing up just how important the soundtrack and the music was in the film. Again, most of it was, you know, kind of this orchestral type of music. But the reason I got to bring it up, the importance of that, is Jaws is the first time where the music was such a major part of the film, but it actually received... a couple Academy Awards for the music and the sound effects, and the guy that did the music for Jaws, John Williams, would go on to have a huge career like in Hollywood. I mean, he's the same guy that did the music for the Star Wars movies, and if you listen to like that Star Wars theme and the Jaws theme, they're both similar in the sense that they don't sound alike, but they're iconic pieces of music that you hear in these legendary films. And you hear that Star Wars theme, you hear the Jaws theme. It makes sense it's the same guy because they're just as iconic today as when those films came out. And we, you know, you hear pieces of music like that. Most people aren't able to name the composer right away, but we know John Williams because he's done all these great film scores. I think he's the same guy that did the Indiana Jones stuff. So interesting, just a guy like that could have the impact he's had in Hollywood, you know, in just doing music like that.
Well, you know, but then also, you know, the musical backdrop to Spielberg's movies were a big deal to Spielberg. You know, that was a huge importance to him. It was, even in E.T. and all of these other movies, if you notice, the musical background that, he was very, very, it was a big special thing that he embraced.
Yeah.
So which gives the chance to people like that to become successful musically in doing soundtracks for movies and stuff like that.
Yeah. And
whenever you hear that dun 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 dun,
you know the film.
Dun 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 dun, it's iconic now. I mean, it is so used for effect in other things, especially in comedic stuff now.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's taken just that simple two notes, dun dun dun, just two notes.
Yeah.
Has become a life of its own.
And in fact, Jaws, the legacy of Jaws is really everlasting in a sense. And you look at other things in pop culture, just starting about 15 years ago, they started having on these different TV stations, they would have Shark Week, and they'd have different things on sharks and stuff. And it's become really, a special time of year where that station, they make these special things that they are just to do with sharks, and people will tune into this programming for like a whole week. So, because of Jaws, I mean, people are still interested in, sharks, and they're having Shark Week, and it's really become a huge thing.
Well, I'm a big fan of Shark Week.
Yeah.
I've every once in a while I'll kind of wane, because things, but there are times that, if I'm flipping the channel and because the sharks are such an interesting creature. To me, they almost remind me of the same visual of a hawk or an eagle, but an underwater. They have the eyes that you see of a shark.
Yeah.
The actual look of a shark, the visual. They're very stunning creatures. What their whole being is to kill.
Yeah. And I think during
survive.
I think during Shark Week, what makes those things they put on TV so interesting to watch is it's just because you're kind of if you're watching those people swim in the water for the sharks, they're kind of going into unknown territory. You're in the sharks' home, and you're trying to learn about what these sharks do in the water, but it's kind of that fear factor of not knowing. You're in their world, so to speak, and anything could happen. You're underwater, and hopefully nothing happens. But it's just that kind of fear factor of not knowing.
Well, it is their world.
Yeah.
I mean, if once you jump into the ocean,
you're invading their world. Yeah.
Yes, they are the kings of that domain. There's very few other creatures
like that
live in the ocean that can dominate over a shark, especially a great white.
Yeah.
There's even a mid-sized shark like a tiger shark. If I saw one underneath the ocean and I was swimming around, I would
get out.
I'd turn white.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
I'd be running, getting out.
Literally turn white.
Yeah, and then you don't know because you're like, should I run? Should I walk? but you'd have that fear, and I think most people would panic and try to run. And then a couple other things. We were talking about the music, Gar, and it's kind of interesting because probably up until that point, Jaws was the first movie that had where the music really had a major impact on the film, and it was a very key factor. I mean, probably up until like 1977 or 78, whenever Saturday Night Fever came out, that was probably the first kind of blockbuster soundtrack. But probably predating that, it would have to be Jaws.
Yes. And, but the 70s was a real
eye-opening
heyday for movies because movies kind of changed in the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
Previous to that, everything was very, happy, good time, entertainment, very fluffy. But then all of a sudden, the 70s, things changed, and scary movies became very, very popular. Yeah, they became blockbusters. You got Alien. That was released back in you have Jaws, you have The Omen, you have The Exorcist.
But even like with Jaws, I mean, Jaws could kind of be it was identified as being a thriller, or I guess you could even say a horror flick, and up until that point, with people had different ideas of what a horror flick would, which most people think maybe Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, the Mummy. Where with Jaws, it's like, okay, well, this could be a horror movie too, but this is a different type of horror. And I think with Jaws, that's the thing. Even with horror films, you were kind of able to make it really what you wanted the horror to be. It didn't have to be so one-dimensional.
Well, the difference is the horrors movies of the 70s had the real scare factor.
Oh, yeah.
Previous to that, it was, I have to admit, my personal preference is creepy over scary.
Yeah.
But, it doesn't mean if I can have scary and creepy, I'm in heaven.
I think Jaws...
If I just have scary just for scary... Or but previous to the 70s, it was more on the creepy side.
Yeah, and I think the thing with Jaws that I like too, even though it's being a thriller or whatever you want to call it, is you had blood and stuff in the film, but it wasn't overdone. Like I do think they would make Jaws today. Maybe there'd be like just a gore fest of blood, but they didn't do that with Jaws, and it worked. It was just enough, just what it should be, and it was still enough to scare people.
I would be very skeptical if they remade Jaws.
Well, yeah,
what the studios always want to do now is because it just seems that the people that have the most power are the executives rather than the creatives.
Oh, yeah.
And the executives are only interested in one thing.
Yeah.
Return.
Yeah, and
return on investment.
Yeah, and I think Jaws is a great example of that, because they have tried on 3 different occasions to remake it, but each time they failed. I mean, at one point you have Jaws 3D, and even thinking, oh well, okay, we got this new 3D technology, so we can do all kinds of things we couldn't do back in 1975, but it was never as successful as the original film. And I was reading,
which really makes my point.
Yeah, and
they're only interested in return.
Yeah.
They're not interested in the creative side. And so studios, if somebody redid actual Jaws, just redid Jaws, they would turn it into a special effects extravaganza.
Yeah.
And very little would be paid attention to dialogue and characters and, all the elements that, draw you into the actual characters in the movie. You wouldn't have a part being portrayed as great as Robert Shaw did to his character. I think it was Quint, the boat captain.
Yeah,
his character jumps out in that movie Jaws. He embraces everything that makes an actor why they want to be an actor.
Yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, okay, by Jaws 2, you kind of, I think, reason it wasn't as successful. I mean, you could only really strike gold once, I think, really. I mean, it was special because it was a first of its kind when the original came out in 1975. But see, when you do Jaws 2, you're kind of like, okay, I could see this thing where, the shark is attacking people on the beach. That's really like a one-in-a-lifetime, maybe, occurrence. And then you're like, okay, this is really happening again. Yeah, right. And then I think the other reason the other Jaws films weren't as successful is because Spielberg was not involved in the other three, from what I understand. It didn't say why he didn't want to be involved, but I guess he kind of had that thought that no, this is a one in a lifetime thing. It's it's a special, very very much like E.T. They always wanted to make an E.T. too, but he kind of stuck to his guns and said no, we're not doing that. And even the guy that wrote the book and co-wrote the original script, he didn't want to be involved with the other three Jaws movies. So I think when you take two key ingredients like Spielberg and the guy that wrote the book, and they're no longer involved, you're just getting other people to kind of carry on the story they created,
Yes. Yeah. Well, but that's the creative mind.
Yeah, yeah.
The creative mind doesn't want to do another. When you look at bands,
yeah.
Bands had the same kind of pressure being put on them back in the 70s about putting out albums. Put out another this. We want another this.
Yeah.
We want another that. And the bands would always, that was always the struggle that the bands had, is because the bands would always want to keep moving forward creatively.
That's a struggle you have,
Let's just do another this, or let's just do another that. Doing another this and doing another that is very creative stifling.
Yeah.
And so there's a very big similarity between what a guy like Spielberg with the studio executives, that same kind of struggle as bands like Queen and all of these other bands that had that same kind of pressure being put on them to put out another. This was so successful, make another one of those for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to kind of carry that point home, kind of what you're talking about is, as most people know, Gar, listening to this, you portray Axl Rose in a Los Angeles-based Guns N' Roses tribute band, Appetite for Destruction. Now, Appetite for Destruction, it was very raw for its time in 1987 when that album came out. It was very, people say, they wrote those songs like on the streets of LA. But here's the thing. Okay, that was a great album for its time. And that was kind of Axl Rose's F you to the world. When Guns N' Roses is just coming, kind of having their big breakout. That's a big debut album. But then, like you're saying, the people at the label want, okay, Axl, we want Appetite Part 2. And I think, that's why Use Your Illusion, I love many of those songs and those two albums, but Use Your Illusion, I dare say, was Axl Rose's F you to the industry, saying, no, I got other influences, I got other type of songs I want to put out there. This is what I'm doing now.
Yeah, well, but that's the creative mind. The creative mind has to it's so stifling for somebody to put pressure on you to do another this or do another that. That you know what I mean? It's just it's hard to describe.
Yeah, I hear you.
But that. If you look at a lot of the careers that have had longevity, the number one ingredient as to why those bands were so successful for such a long time is because they never did another this or another that. And they never wrote, a song, do another Stairway to Heaven. Another. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Every song that they do when they write, the song stands on its own.
Yeah, another
rather than making another this or another that. But that's it's a clash of the non-creative mind, the number mind, which they have their place and they have their, you can't have business without people that have expertises in those areas. But it's a clash between the people in those areas and the creative, because music is a business,
Yeah.
and in order for business to be successful, business needs to be able to have income coming in.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And the numbers minds understand that, but the creative minds don't.
Yeah.
The creative minds only understand, okay, this is a
This is a hit. We want hits. Yeah.
Of stone, and I'm going to chisel a piece of art out of this block of stone.
Yeah, it's like,
You see what I mean?
yeah, when Soundgarden and Nirvana and Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam started becoming big, then they dropped all the hair metal bands, and we're gonna do like a cookie cutter thing. We're gonna have nothing but grunge bands. We're saying nothing but grunge bands. That's the flavor of the month. And
well, but that's a perfect example.
Yeah, yeah.
When hair bands started in the early 80s, because it was really 80, 81
Yeah.
that hair bands first came out. The Motley Crues and all of the Quiet Riots.
Yeah, Rats.
Those, I mean, when you look at their albums and that were first released, that was way back in the early 80s.
Oh yeah.
And that's when it was underground. It was new.
Yeah.
It was this new exciting thing. But now you fast forward all the way to the end of the 80s, and
it's time for something new.
It became formulated.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like music has a cycle every 10 years. It's something new. And, these bands that you and I grew up on, they never totally went away. They're still there because people love them. One band I think that's really got an interesting history is, one band I really love is Cinderella. And they only put out 4 albums in their career. Probably the first 3 albums are kind of what people love the most. If you go to a Cinderella show, that'd be the stuff, that they play. That's the bulk of their hits. But my point is, I love those 3 Cinderella albums. I'll tell you what, if they never put out another album again, I can get off on that music just with 3 albums worth of music, because their songs are that good, that lasting, and each album, like you're saying, kind of really stands out on its own.
And each song stands out on its own. It's not another this or another that.
Yeah.
And as long as you have entertainment being the entertainment business, whether it be movies, whether it be music whether it be whatever, as long as you have those 2 words put together, it's an actual clash of those 2 words, because you're saying entertainment, which is the creative, and business. Yeah,
and the business part, what I hate about it is all too often the creative side, the talent that makes the music, that writes it, gets screwed over, where the guys in the suits and the managers in a record company, they end up making more money than the actual talent.
Well, because when you have creative people, they're really focused on is the creative side.
Yeah.
Which makes them very naive to the business side, and leaves them open to being taken advantage by little clauses in contracts that you really don't understand, what you're actually giving up or what you're actually agreeing to, which is why, it's common knowledge nowadays, you do not sign any contract without having it looked over by a lawyer that represents you. Because the business people are always looking to take advantage of the creative person's naivety towards the business side.
And that's what their interest is in, of course, so you can't blame them for that, I guess. Now, I know you got plans you got things to do today, Gar, so we're going to get ready to wrap it up. Before I do, I got just one last question for you.
Sure.
I know everything, we're talking about your band Appetite for Destruction, and I know you, like a lot of bands, you guys have kind of been locked down like all of us for the last year. I was reading you guys are starting to get shows planned, or do you got any planned right now?
Yeah, we just, things are starting to get much more active, which makes me really happy, because when you're in this whole lockdown thing, you're wondering, well, how is it going to be?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Is there going to actually be a chance to be able to do shows and be able to do this, and the business side of it? But things things are starting to come in. We just got a show on the 16th in Turlock, California.
Oh, wow.
It's a drive-in show.
Okay, wow.
And so, we're making the plans to go out there to. It's about an hour south of Modesto, California, and about an hour north of Fresno. It's called Turlock, California, and there's a fairgrounds in Turlock.
Okay.
And so it's a drive-in show where people can go in their cars.
So is it just your band or
social distance? And there's going to be a bunch of bands.
Oh, cool.
I don't have any details as to what the other bands are going to be.
Okay. Yeah.
We're going on at 6 o'clock, and we're really excited about it because truly right now, as things stand, that's going to be our first show back.
Wow,
playing, and the anticipation of the band members is really, really high.
Welcome back, my friend.
Survived something. There's a lot of bands that didn't survive this lockdown. When you can't play for a year. Or actually more like a year and a half, there's a lot of bands that didn't survive this, and we actually were able to survive this, and so the anticipation of all of our band members is really, really high.
Wow! Well, welcome back to the stage. Yeah,
our first local show. It's for LA. It's maybe about a 2-hour drive.
Wow!
But it's out in Indio, just a little bit past Palm Springs. We're going to be playing at Fantasy Springs Casino in their Rock Yard.
Oh, wow!
Really, really super popular concert series that they do during the summer months. And we're going to be playing there in August 28th.
Okay.
So we're really excited about that. That's going to be our first, local to Southern California show. And I just got contacted by a booking agent that we're working with. That's working on putting us on a TV show. I don't really know a lot of the details. They just contacted me and asked us if we would be interested in being part of that. And we have to do a Zoom meeting with the producers of that show so they can kind of get a feel for us and see if we're right for the show. And but I told him that me personally, I already have experience in doing a show as a main part of the show. There was back in 2000, I did a show called Your Big Break.
Oh, wow.
Where that was nationally televised all across the United States in prime time, and it's not unfamiliar territory for me in doing that kind of stuff.
Well,
so we got that. We don't really have a date. They are talking about filming in about a month or two.
Wow.
So we've got things now that are starting to brew, and we're getting really excited.
That's great, Gar. Welcome.
Looking good.
Let me just end the show then saying welcome back to the stage, my friend, and I can't wait to hear how the show goes. And just to give our audience a little anticipation, the show we just did on Jaws, this will be going up in July. In early June, we're going to be posting our Black Sabbath episode we did on the 50th anniversary of Mastered Reality. And next up, we're in a couple of weeks from now, we're going to be talking about the 60th anniversary of the Flintstones. So a lot of fun stuff ahead. So thanks again, Gar. Enjoy the rest of your day, my friend.
Dude, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate doing this. This is an absolute blast.
Yeah, I have. I tell you, each time we do it, I have more and more fun than the time before. So it's been a blast. Take care, buddy. Bye bye.